So the final step in preparing my answer here is to find links I can make between the extract and the wider play, and also to then bring in some context and some contextual information from the time that the play was written and how a contemporary audience might have reacted to that. When I think about the wider play, the first thing that pops into my mind, thinking about the extract that I've read, is that immediately before that extract, Lady Macbeth reads Macbeth's letter and he calls her his partner in greatness. So that shows that at the start of the play, the Macbeths have an incredibly equal relationship, and Macbeth does see her as on the same level as himself. Now, this links to the "My battlements" quote, in which Lady Macbeth takes possession of the castle. She puts herself in a position of command and control, and this demonstrates her own perception of her power level. She clearly sees herself able to make decisions and to decide the course of her and her husband's future. Following on from the scene that comes up in the extract, of course, Lady Macbeth begins a campaign of bullying and coercion by questioning Macbeth's masculinity repeatedly as a way of controlling him and making him do what she wants. And this links to Lady Macbeth's abandonment of her feminine role, her appeal to the spirits to unsex her, and she effectively takes the role of the man in that couple from Macbeth, who is much less willing to commit murder. And in the early parts of the play, she is the masculine, warlike, ruthless, powerful character. Things change, of course, though, and this happens around about the time Macbeth makes the decision to kill Banquo. He shuts Lady Macbeth out. He refuses to tell her. He tells her to be ignorant of the knowledge when he's planning to kill Banquo. And this secretive nature that comes out from Macbeth once he is king, refusing to share his plan to kill Banquo, refusing to let Lady Macbeth in, means that Lady Macbeth loses her power and her influence. Macbeth reasserts control by blocking her out. Whether this, you could argue this is a reaction to the manipulation she subjected him to earlier, or because of his spiraling guilt, both are valid, both are interesting comments to make, but we can see how that power dynamic shifts. And finally, of course, Lady Macbeth is consumed by guilt, consumed by regret. She goes mad and ultimately she dies. Look at the references to hell, the appeal that her keen knife would see not the wound. In the extract, these seem to be appeals by Lady Macbeth for the power to do evil, to kill. But when we look at the later Lady Macbeth, punished by her guilt, hounded by regret, how her early powers stripped away, then we see irony in these references when she summons hell and ends up in her own personal hell, that she doesn't want to see the wound but cannot unsee the blood on her hands. She cannot stop replaying those events. So she's reduced to a weak and a hopeless character, which is massively in contrast to the powerful, ruthless and scary character that we see at the start. The next step is context, and this is equally important. While we don't need to constantly talk about context, and we don't need to include huge paragraphs about the historical context, a sentence here or there that links what's happening in the play to what was happening in Shakespeare's world at the time makes a huge difference in the quality of our answer, and really does allow us to understand the play on another level, which is, it's not just a piece of entertainment, it's a reaction to things that are happening in the world at the time. So the four key pieces of context that I've got listed here are: one, that King James himself was really interested in witchcraft and the occult, and what you can see here is a cover of Demonology by King James I. So he actually wrote books studying witchcraft and evil spirits. And Lady Macbeth directly calls on evil spirits to help her in that extract. This is directly appealing to James's interests. He's going to be very interested by what's happening there. He's going to see something that he likes, and it's exciting for the audience too. These are evil forces, and there's a certain level of excitement that comes from Lady Macbeth doing that. We mustn't forget also that Lady Macbeth is challenging the role of women in the 16th and the 17th century. The woman's sphere, as it might have been referred to, was one of nurturing, of family making, of homemaking, and Lady Macbeth utterly rejects these. She has no children, as Macduff points out at one point in the play. She is willing to kill. She is warlike. She is manipulative. And it makes her almost more of a villain in the eyes of Shakespeare's audience, because she's going against the natural order, which was a very prevalent, common idea at the time, that this is what women do, this is what men do, separate spheres. Lady Macbeth crosses that line, and that makes her a destabilizing character. Think also about the Gunpowder Plot. Now, this was an actual attempt to blow up Parliament, to kill the king, and King James's own life had recently been threatened. So this is exciting, it's relevant, it's the commoners watching this are going to be excited by those references. The king is going to see his own self reflected in Duncan, and in the same way that films and TV shows today draw on what's in the news, Shakespeare's doing the same. He knew that this is what people would pay to see, and so he was including that. So any reference to killing the king, we can make a reference to the Gunpowder Plot. We're watching this terrible plan play out. And finally, something else that King James was incredibly interested in, a philosophical idea, that the divine right of kings, that the king was appointed by God himself. And so to kill a king, to plot against a king, is to literally go against God. Lady Macbeth summons evil spirits. She directly references hell, because she is aligning herself with hell, with chaos, with evil. It sets up her punishment later. Both she and Macbeth are punished, they're brought down by guilt. There's no way that they can succeed at the end of the play, because they've gone against God's word. And so by presenting Lady Macbeth as a character who will go against this rule, we not only set her up as a villain, but Shakespeare sets her up for her fall later, and the audience see the natural order restored by the end of the play. Now, having all this knowledge is very well, but how do I plan an answer? What I'm looking at here is a 5-step plan, and you can see on the left here, it breaks down into 5 rough sections: make my point, give my evidence, provide an explanation, zoom out for the wider play to link in there, and then link it to the context as well. So I'm going to talk about ideas and possibly methods here, give a quotation. Here is all about the effect, and terminology will come here as well. And then what I'm looking at is context of the play, context of the writing itself. And I've kept the question here because whenever I'm answering a question, what I've really got to do is keep the question in mind at all times. So in an exam, I would be looking back at the question at the top of my page. Here, I'm just keeping it top right, just so I don't forget about it. So using everything I know so far, with my extract, with my context, with my wider play knowledge, what can I say? Well, here's what a plan for my paragraph might look like. My point, directly answering the question: Shakespeare presents Lady Macbeth as a powerful woman, good, through her immediate actions in this scene. So I'm identifying a method there. And it's time to move on to my quotation. So immediately upon hearing Macbeth's news, she begins planning Duncan's, here's my quote, fatal entrance. Small quote embedded into a sentence there. I've got the keywords that I need. So let's pull this out and see what we can do with it. I'm using the show, suggest, and symbolize method of explanation. It shows her immediate decision to kill the king, his fatal entrance. By entering her castle, Duncan will die. It suggests, so this is where I begin reading between the lines and pulling meanings and inferences out of the language. It suggests her ruthless and violent nature. The fact that she's so willing to kill straight away, that she sees the very act of entering the castle as fatal. Her existing frustration, maybe, at the current order of things. The fact that she's annoyed that she can't rise further in the hierarchy, perhaps. And it also shows her willingness to do anything for power. The fact that she's perfectly happy to kill the king. Going deeper than that, what does this symbolize? What were the big ideas Shakespeare wants to drag out of this? It symbolizes the dangers of ambition. by being ambitious, by being ruthless, Lady Macbeth has fallen into this trap that she is willing to kill, and willing to kill a king, no less. Now it's time to link this to the wider play. This quote foreshadows her pitiless forcing of Macbeth towards killing Duncan. She has immediately made the decision that Duncan must die, and she will not be swayed from that decision. Linking that to the question, it shows she's a powerful character because she is so focused. She is so willing to take these actions. And finally, linking into the context. Immediately sets Lady Macbeth as a villain and a frightening character because she's willing to commit regicide, thus going against the divine right of kings, thus setting herself up against God. And she carries out a total rejection of feminine norms. She completely rejects the idea, the role of what a woman should be at that time. So to an audience watching this, she is an unnatural character. She is a strange and threatening character. She is a character who aligns herself with evil and with chaos. With these 5 points, I'm ready to put my paragraph together. I can effectively plug these 5 things one after the other, and my paragraph is complete. And once I produce several of these paragraphs, my answer is complete. You'll notice I didn't use terminology in this particular answer, and that's simply because there isn't anything relevant, really, that needs to be pulled out. Earlier in my analysis, in the abstract, I identified the personal, the possessive pronouns, my, and the imperatives, and those are the terminology that I'll be using. So I'm not worrying about the terminology here, but if I use any of the other quotations, then I need to make sure that I am doing so. And with that, we are done. So all that's left to you now is to take what you've learned from these 3 short clips and apply them to your own Macbeth answer. And I look forward to reading those and being able to give you some feedback. I also really want some feedback on the video itself. This is the first time that we've tried something like this. It's not going to be the last time. I want to make much more use of this sort of thing, and it would be very helpful for me to get some feedback from you on what worked, what didn't, and what you would like next time. So thank you very much. Take care. Look after yourselves. I hope that I'll see you very soon in the future. Have a lovely week.